So, hello, good afternoon, everyone. So, hello, welcome here at the Kunsthalle in Mannheim to this special event of the Green Room, das grüne Zimmer. The whole event today will be held in English, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask for translation and during the films. We are very, very happy to show the exhibition 1.5 Degrees, which examines the interplay between human beings and nature and things like that. And we're working on that with the Bundesgartenschau 2023, which will close tomorrow, like the exhibition itself will do as well. And for that reason, we created a supporting program called the Green Room. And in the Green Room, we invited different communities from the city of Mannheim to think with us about climate change and what is our role during in the climate change and how can we change climate change. Yeah. And for that reason, we invited today with the Equal Opportunities Commission for people of diverse sexual and gender identities today from the city of Mannheim. Anbid Zaman, who is a human rights activist, and a few other people. But I won't give an introduction to them. This will be Anbid's part after that. He's a human that, she prefers, they prefers, all pronouns. So Anbid is a gender fluid person and accepts all pronouns. And we are just sorry, I forgot my gloves. It's kind of hard, and my computer as well. They are exclusive board members of Aktionsbündnis gegen Homophobie e.V. and have served as youth representative from Europe and Central Asia to the ELGA World Steering Community for 4 years. With their experience and expertise in SOGESC and migration relations to peace building and anti-violence work, they are taking an advisory role for various initiatives and organizations. So we are very, very happy to have you here today and give us an introduction to this wonderful film, and looking very much forward to a discussion afterwards. So welcome.
Thank you very much for this invitation to the city of Mannheim, to Kunsthalle Mannheim, my first visit, and also for this very important movie to be screened today at the, if I'm correct, final day of the exhibition, 1.5 Degrees. Tomorrow is the closing. So we are all have a lot to be done for the future, for our loved ones, next generation, and for the planet, that it's livable, and for that, we'll have a lot of things to do. We'll start with watching the movie, which is coming from a region often not discussed about, left invisible, an indigenous community, SAMA DILAUT. The documentary film is by Filipino filmmaker Rhadem Musawah, who is also present with us today. After the screening of the film, we will come together and have a discussion around how climate change is impacting vulnerable communities the most, and how we could move forward for a future where we leave no one behind. To start our day, I would like to invite our Honorable Deputy Mayor of Mannheim, Professor Dr. Diana Pretzell. Professor Dr. Diana Pretzell, you studied forestry in Freiburg and journalism in Hohenheim. worked, among other things, at World Wildlife Fund, Germany, where you were head of nature conservation in Germany and later director of biodiversity policy. You have been environmental mayor of the City of Mannheim since 2021. In this role, you were responsible for climate and environmental protection, and as a mayor, you actively accompanied the Federal Garden Show in Mannheim 2023, what we're enjoying. You are also working on Mannheim's local Green Deal, the local implementation of the European Green Deal. Since 25th July of this year, you have been elected first mayor of the City of Mannheim, thus the deputy mayor. Congratulations, and invite you here on the desk. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this nice introduction to my person. Hello, everybody. It's an honor for us that you're here, especially, of course, Rhadem Musawah, who made this wonderful film, and Michael Dawila and Sana, and especially Anbid Zaman. You're all here in this very special thing here today, and yeah, we are honored that you're here because it's not only on climate change what we are used to, but it's of a lot more. It's about vulnerable groups, and it shows how closely connected these topics are. So, dear fellow human beings, dear guests from Mannheim, and especially dear guests from international countries, a lot of you had a long journey, so this is very special for us as well that you came for this wonderful event. And on behalf of the Mannheim City Council, I would like to thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak here today. And of course, your topic today is climate protection. I'm quite proud that not only at the BUGA, the Bundesgartenschau, we give a lot of information on that, but we are also give a lot of information here through the topic of arts here in this Kunsthalle, and we are a model city for the European Union, for climate change and for the Green Deal. And I think this is special for quite not that big town in Germany. We're not small, we are the second biggest town in Baden-Württemberg. Still, we are not one of the million towns in Germany. What, as a city that is very industrialized, we are aiming to be climate neutral in 2030. And I think these changes of climate change, they take part in the cities. And especially, we try to take care for the vulnerable groups. As we are also one of the most hottest cities in Germany, of the big cities. Last year, we were actually the most hottest city in Germany, as the German weather forecast said. And we're not proud of that, but we try to work on it very hard to make it a livable city for our inhabitants. And we are looking especially for the vulnerable groups. And for that, we try to green the city a lot. Greening is one of the things that helps to make it livable, to bring a lot of trees in the city, to bring a lot of water in the city. And if you walk around the city, you will see that. Also, you find places where you can get drinking water all over the place, just around the corner here. And these are all steps to go into this direction to look for vulnerable groups, especially very young people, very old people that are infected by the heat. Yeah. And on this Yeah, on this I think we work together very closely. We try with the Green Deal, the local Green Deal, you just talked about it. This is about sustainable work in all things, in all places that are important for the inhabitants, just as traffic, just as buildings, just as all landscape management, etc. And on all these fields, we try to do projects together with the people, and we try to help them to get inspired and to work for sustainability. As I think we as a city will not find the solutions ourselves. We have to find the solutions together with you, with everybody who's willing to go into this direction together with us. And also we work on diversity. This is also our very important aim, to be a city of freedom, and discrimination should not be placed at all here. We are looking for peaceful and respectful coexistence as a fundamental prerequisite for function of our city. And also in 2030, our mission statement says that we will be the great, there's no discrimination against everybody. No, everybody has the same rights, and this is part of our mission statement here. Also, since 21, we are a LGBTIQ freedom zone, and also this is, we were one of the first cities in Europe to be this, and we wanted to be this from our heart, because Mannheim is a city with a lot of diversity, and so this really should be part of our living, and it fits together also on our efforts on climate change and on biodiversity as well, as we think these equal actions should take part together, and they belong together very, very importantly. So on behalf of the City of Mannheim, I'd like to thank all of you for your daily work. A lot of you are working on climate protection and on diversity in our city, in your cities, and not everybody of you is doing it by a job, but also just working for the future generation. And I would like to thank you for that. And now I wish you a very enjoyable documentary and a good panel discussion, and enjoy your afternoon and evening here in Mannheim. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for your presence and for your words, and your commitment to work towards an equal society and for environmental protection. And it does come together. We have to work hand in hand for the betterment. Thank you very much. So today, thank you very much also to all of the audience who have made time and show interest in the film and the panel discussion. The documentary film will be screened initially, and following the documentary film, we'll go to a panel discussion consisting 3 panelists. I would like to quickly name them already. Rhadem Musawah, as talked about, the filmmaker, is present here. Dawila Venning is also present from the community of SAMA DILAUT. We have a climate activist, Darya Sotoodeh, who also will be part of the panel. Unfortunately, our panelist, Zanila Mofui, is not here with us due to difficulty getting a visa, extending a visa. The visa the person didn't have visa to remain for the panel discussion, so we couldn't have them here. So shall we start the film? Thank you very much.
There are 8 billion human beings that populate the Earth. They are people all across the world that make up families and communities. Some communities we haven't even heard of, with families that have no place to call home. I share stories of extraordinary people. I've always been fascinated to see how resilient people can be no matter what their situation is. A community unaware of the reality of climate change shows me another view of life. They are the sea gypsies, nomads. They live on houseboats, and their lifeblood is the sea.
And my grandma told me the story. These indigenous people, which is SAMA DILAUT, came from Johor Bahru, which is Sabah. Sabah Sampurna. They are live in only in Bangka boat. After that, they came here to Sibutu Island. Firstly, this Sibutu Island, this barangay Tandooa is not part of Sibutu. This first is part of Sitangkay. But they took here and built a house. Some of them even can build a house. They live in a bangka, in the boat.
And they're also known as boat people? Or
Boat
sea
people,
gypsies?
sea gypsies.
And that was the history of
The SAMA DILAUT. Yun sabi-sabi lang sa mga kaninuan namin, ang ano daw, ang mga SAMA DILAUT o IPs, parang may connection sila sa dagat. Kasi usually, yung paniniwala namin, yung mga amoy talaga ng mga taon na indigenous people, di kasing amoy ng parang sa amin yung indigenous, para kami SAMA DILAUT, SAMA DALEA, parang amoy isda man sila. Yun talaga.
So they really feel like they're part of the sea.
Part of the sea.
The SAMA DILAUT, also known as SAMA Bajau, are an indigenous tribe. For hundreds of years, the sea dwellers lived in the waters of the Sulu Sea, between Tawi-Tawi, Philippines, and Sabah. Living freely in the open sea, they move from one community to another, dependent mostly in areas that are rich in fishing grounds.
But decades of armed conflicts, piracy, fishing, and environmental issues have led them to abandon their nomadic boat-dwelling life.
Usah kami mau po bang niya tatamban kami na hindi ko ina ko usaha ko na napalasan kami ba na tapakalum kami na mato kami nami to sadya na usaha kami sanang na ba na kami pindah.
Kay ako mikit dito si Buto mo ko sang kalima kay na maniya salamat na ako bay magpopo maggaji na gana ako sakyan ng bana maggaji na siya ito ngayon ko tagalaga na ibuanan ako 20 na makabili na ako ng takakan iparo ko dito anon bata na ako ngayon ako mamakalum kami ng bana may makausip pwede paran na nari para niya mo na niya bay narakkaduha tos karumpo na pamili kami takakan. Nahal ko luman matahik do ay maglinggi do ko. Anak-anak ko na maggaji na magingkot. Walang kami gipay magkakan ni walang gipay magadyan. Nahal maglaw makatuyo na. Bili na sa galwa pilak.
Bakit po walang lata?
Yung nahuhuli lang dito yung maliit na lang isda. Noon, marami noon isda, pero ngayon binubomba na yung mga dayuhan eh. Yung mga dayuhan, yung galing lugar, binubomba yung isda. Yung para sa yung mga dynamite yun, ang sabog. Dati dyan sumabog talaga yung pagbomba ng isda. Pero ngayon mga 5 years na ago, parang wala na sumabog yung dynamite sa dagat. Kasi may Philippine Coast Guard na ngayon, may naguhuli na.
Mostly people live here in Tandooak is Tausug. They are mixed by Tausug. But the Tausug and Pios, they are levelly up than the SAMA DILAUT. Especially also the livelihood here on them, not like before. Before, the fish on them is really they getting. They can catch fish already, but now there are so many people live here.
The SAMA Bajau are very dependent for their livelihood, for their food, on whatever they can catch, collect from the sea. So they collect sea cucumber, they fish. Some of them actually grow seaweeds. Okay. Seaweeds is actually a 10 billion peso industry in the country. Tawi-Tawi supplies 25% of that.
Katulad namin yung mga farmer, magdala mga 2 sako dyan, itimbang. Pagbalik namin, pambili yung mga bigas, tsaka sukal at tsaka arena. Yun po, parang pangbahay para sa isang buwan, yung gastos. Pero yung mga isda, minsan makahuli, minsan hindi. Kapag magandang panahon, makahuli sila. Kapag hindi, lugi sila sa gasolina. Minsan kaya na magmahal ang isda. Minsan yung isda galing Malaysia patungo sa Tangkay. Yung isda kanina, galing Malaysia talaga ang isda kanina. Kaya na magmahal. Yung tubig galing sa Tangkay, galing dito eh. Dito yung nag-deliver yung mga tubig dito. Ngayon, pinabayaan talaga yung mga, special yung mga LGU, government employment. Kaya madumi talaga kahit sana magtapo kasi wala rin magpipigil. Wala rin magbantay.
There are lack of food supply. They have no proper work. Mostly they are earning and then kung sa Tagalog kahig isang tuka and then food to eat is the common problem here. Secondly is the education and the third is medication. 80% are indigenous people here in Tawi-Tawi. The indigenous people here in Sibuto belongs to Sama and Badjao. We have the different tribes here in Sibuto, which is composed of, we have Bisaya here, we have Tausug, we have Amaranao, but mostly are the indigenous people belongs to Badjao and Sama. There are two different words to express or to call them. The Sama, they are the people living here in the land, and the Badjao, they are the people or the persons living in a boat. That is as a gypsy people. I think the number one problem here is the water supply. It's hard for them to find a water for drink. Yes, it's hard for them to find a water for taking a bath. Yes, and that's why one of the factor need here in Tando Owak Island is a water, ma'am.
They have rainwater actually.
Oh, they have
Yeah, that's what they do. They collect rainwater. That's what they do. I don't even know how they can survive there with just rainwater. And then I guess they also buy, I think they buy water from the mainland. And they don't treat the water they drink. So it's more expensive if you buy bottled water. Obviously, they can't afford that. So they just buy untreated water and drink it.
Narekara niya tayo narak ka 200 pilak na lang nasa pamili dahil makabuwas pag ikayo. Ang ganyan na.
This is the medication, and this is what they've been giving her for 5 months, but she's not feeling better.
Siya na ito pamon ka 5 months sa maniya pag baro ko bihap.
No one has ever told me that people are complaining about stomach aches. Or maybe they just take like painkillers or something. That's why no one notices. It has not been reported at all.
They also have lack access to free medicines
in
Sibuto and Sisitangkay.
Well, there's a hospital actually in Sibuto. Have you seen that? There's a hospital there. Yeah, but then I don't know if they have doctors though.
Huh?
I don't think they have doctors there who actually work there. Unfortunately, they're not treated the same way as like the other tribes here. Yeah, they don't even get to attend schools, because other kids laugh at them. So there's just very few of them actually who get to attend school and finish college. Because of that, they drop out of school because they're not.
Their highest education is elementary level. They are going to find their ways to getting married at the early age, ma'am. Firstly, their attire, they cannot easily adapt what is and then secondly is their language. They prioritize working than the school.
There still are many communities who are not formally educated. And because of non-access to formal or basic education, that they are left ignorant of their own rights.
How we see Sama Badjao people are more on persons at risk of statelessness because hindi pa naman nila na-achieve yung situation na hindi sila ma-ascribe to a certain nationality or citizenship. So, at risk pa lang sila. And that risk is because they lack access to birth documents, to nationality documents. But it's still possible for those to be, repaired and magkaroon sila ng access. So, we call them persons at risk of statelessness.
They don't farm on land. Everything has to be from on the sea. They're very dependent. Everything in their lives are dependent on the sea. So, without that, I don't know what will happen to them. It's either they will change their lifestyle, they start living on land, start farming on land, which is, I guess, a 365 change in their lifestyle. That's not for the last, 200 years, 300 years, they've been living in the ocean.
As for the displaced, yes, ang daming instances na nadi-displace ang Sama Badjao people. Merong aspect kasi na economic displacement, but that would be on a migration aspect. But there's also displacement of them because of climate change, for example. Rising sea levels. So, nagmo-move sila away from the coast dahil tumataas na. And nagkakaroon na ngayon ng difficulties accessing livelihood like fishing, diba? Most of them, they do fishing. And because of that, they are now being displaced away from their areas of origin. So we also have to look at them.
Climate change has affected everyone, especially here in Tawi-Tawi, where we are very dependent on the ocean for food, for leisure, okay, for livelihood. We don't have the usual climatic patterns, and it has affected the farming of seaweeds, the fishing industry. So there are a lot of problems being faced by our community because of the changes in climate. Well, scientists have provided evidence that there has been an increase in temperature, and this is associated with the increase in carbon dioxide. We have seen a lot of cyclical changes in the atmosphere, but this hasn't changed as drastically as what we are now seeing the last 4 decades, 5 decades. Yeah.
In relation to the issue of migration of the Sama Badjao people, it's really happening even prior. But before climate change has become a huge discussion, may movements na rin talaga. Pero mas naging pronounced because of the changes in the sea, changes in their access to livelihood, worsening sea conditions. So the movement really is a lot more pronounced. But because it's happening more now, then the government should be doing more on that, coming from that perspective that they are also a displaced population. So both cases, both of them as persons at risk of statelessness and as displaced persons, we have to provide them with ample support so that they can still continue living with dignity, even in those situations.
After years of living on houseboats and stilt houses and depending on their livelihood from the sea, some of the SAMA DILAUT had migrated inland in search for a better life. However, some still choose to stay.
Wala kaming property dito. Hiniram lang namin. Naghiram lang kami. Yun nga lang, mahirap lang kami. Tatay ko walang trabaho. Tapos ganito lang yung trabaho namin noon pa. Yung noon, mababa lang ang pambili. Kaya hindi ako nakapag-aral.
And are you from Cebu originally? Yes. Yes. Okay. And you said you recently moved back. Yeah. Where did you go?
Malaysia.
Malaysia.
Nasa kumpanya kami ng sawit, yung naggagawa ng mantika. Kasi mahirap noon. Mahirap ang kabuhayan dito noon. Pero ngayon, nung bumalik ako, at saka na-realize ko sa Malaysia, mas mahirap pala kapag nasa Malaysia kasi hindi mo mission, tapos pag inuutusan ka, dapat gawin mo. Hindi tulad ng dito, tayo ang nagmamay-ari ng trabaho.
With the increasing population of the SAMA DILAUT, there are interventions from organizations to provide the assistance they need.
Our system, when we reach the remote area, we try to find the big children, even though they never been go to school, to stay with us and train them After that, we let them to in charge in the school just to teach how to read and write. If they can read and write, they have hope for their life. And then we mix them with other children. But it was very difficult, it was very tough. It's very, very sad because some children said they don't want with them because they're smelly. What we did, early morning they have to come, and 2 teachers they have to wash them. Every children they have a towel, so they wash them before we started the class, so that the children will not say, "Oh, they're smelly," because they're very sad. In our school, our organization, there is no discrimination.
Programs in the government that cater to the needs of our communities. There was a project called Manchen. Yung ganitong programa ay nag-develop sila ng proseso para mapangalagaan ang mga ina at mga bata. Particularly yung mga nagdadalang tao at kapapanganak. Kaya kung ang tanong nyo, meron bang programang pangkalusugan? Yan ang pwede kong banggitin.
While human rights, diba, we enjoy that anywhere. There's this misconception that when you are in a crisis situation, such as in a disaster or conflict, people think they'll lose their rights whenever they are in that situation, which is wrong. It's a misconception. Even if you're in a difficult situation because of a crisis or conflict, you still have your rights. And the CHR still has the mandate to ensure that those rights are protected. Little by little. Kasi ngayon, medyo malayo pa tayo towards dun sa ideal situation. But if we're not going to do anything, hindi tayo makakausad. So, little by little, we all work together towards that.
Regardless of what appears to hinder their progression in society, their desires to dream and look beyond their circumstances are shared and seen here in this intimate moment.
Naan ba na kasang katasan ng nahianak na sa luma nang ba na makausahan na kalu-kalu niya lijiki na bang niya sukod mantuhan nabilahi kita mo karagangan nilo dahil na magdagang-dagang bilahi ng balo si kitahi kasabka na kayo makaitahi
nabilahi kami asan nang bilahi kami pinda bang talangkatan kami na hapalasan kami na
gusto ko nga magiging businesswoman kaso lang hindi ako makapag-aral ng college pero kung anong makakaya ko yun lang ang gagawin ko. Titinda ng mga damit or shoes, bracelet, parang ganon. Ang gusto ko lang sa kanila makatapos sila sa pag-aaral. Kasi kapag nakatapos ka, magtatanda kang may nag-aantay sa'yo ng pangarap. Hindi tulad ko, ewan ko kung ano nang nag-aantay sa akin. Yun, sila nang magpangarap noon kung anong gusto nila. Suporta lang ako.
Bilay ako ni school pabalik, bo alam ang bang niya gusto nga. Minsan na pa man ito ang batinaan. Na kami ag meals, bilay ako meals, bilay ako single, pangarap ko. Minsan ako mangiusog, bukunda ako bulaog, bukunda ako langog-langog, di na baya kay mo matuon. Minsan dahin na hinang, di matuntu milasaku, mabayay ni ina malasa, unuhin na ina.
We may be from the hills or valleys, city or countryside, land or the sea. There's one thing that we all have, the desire to belong and to be seen. For reasons known and unknown, the status of the SAMA DILAUT in society and the impact of climate change to the community remains unspoken.
How are you all feeling? Good? We don't get to see these realities often. And when watching this movie, I kind of felt often, what can be done? What could we do from here? Are these atrocities being faced elsewhere in the world? A lot to think about today. So I would like to invite our panelists today so we can have some guide to think further how actions can be taken and climate change impacting vulnerable communities, in which nature and what is being done for it. I have the honor to invite the producer and filmmaker Rhadem Musawah. Rhadem, you are an indigenous Muslim human rights defender and an award-winning documentary filmmaker from the Philippines. You are one of the founding members of the leading Pride organization in the Philippines, Pride PH. You are also an international consultant on humanitarian and human rights programs in the Philippines under United Nations and diplomatic agencies. Thank you for being here. A community leader, Dawila Venning. Mikael, you are a SAMA Danish ecologist with deep ties to SAMA DILAUT communities, working with the issue of statelessness, forced migration, and indigenous rights for 8 years of your life, and now seeking to combine indigenous rights and ecological conservation. You are currently the executive director of the Indigenous Communities Learning Center, ICLC, based in Tawi-Tawi, Philippines, we just saw. Thank you for being here with us as well. Our panel is going to complete with Darya Sotoodeh. Darya is a German and Iranian climate justice activist, mainly working with Fridays for Future in Berlin and Heidelberg. You have organized events about the intersection of climate and racism, colonialism, and migration within and outside of the movement for climate. You are active in groups of migration and sea rescue, and also have been in Lutzavat. Besides, you are involved or responsible for the press work and public outreach of Fridays for Future in Germany. Thank you for being part of our panel discussion as well.
I just put it on the side, man. Very much. It was so good.
Get yourself some water. I would need one as well. Thank you very much. So, we have the opportunity also for the audience, for the viewers to also join in the conversation at a later part, where you'll be able to ask questions or also give your comments or impression. My first impression after seeing the film is, as I spoke about, what can be done if it's happening elsewhere as well. Rhadem, would you like to tell us about your motivation in, it's probably your 8th film that you have produced or you have created. What was your motivation? How was your experiencing documenting this from communities, from other stakeholders, from governments? And how has been your experience presenting this film or screening it in international film festivals? just now.
Okay, thank you, Anbid. Hi, everyone. So one of my motivations. So first of all, this is my eighth film, but this is my first film that I produced and funded. So my seventh film, mostly I'm the film director of those films, but it was funded by different organizations and agencies. But with this one, I have more freedom to what I want this film to turn out after it's finished. And also I realized as well when we did our research and in the course room for storyboard and also with our script, we decided to have the voices of women heard from this community. Then I realized and I decided that it's time for me to step back and pave way for a woman director to direct the film because I felt like it is needed. Also, what was the other question again?
Your impression, your experience.
Oh yeah. So I think first is that I've been to a lot of climate change conferences, and one of that as well is with the Paris Peace Forum. They have a big event on climate change. Most of the time when we talk about climate change, it's always about the effects on the lives of people living inland. And there's almost no discussion about communities that lives in the sea or in the shoreline. So that I felt like the need to, be able to start the conversation. Because basically, the film is 27 minutes. It cannot tap all the information. But the intention of the film, aside from that's the only thing that my budget can afford, the intention of the film is really to start conversation, and hopefully it will spark something from all the audience to be able to also ask within themselves about what can they do and what we can do and what are the information we could also share and about the realities that rarely being talked about when it comes to climate change as well. And also, because we've been doing a lot of equality movement in the Philippines, and most of the time when we do equality movement, the indigenous community is always invisible in that movement. So we wave this flag of equality, but there are communities that are excluded. So I felt like I think we needed to give more voice to other minorities so that those minorities that we support will also come and join together to really bring a powerful movement that will really persuade our legislators, our politicians, our government to really pass laws and bills that would protect and also provide opportunities for the marginalized sectors. Because in the Philippines now, it's really hard because our anti-discrimination bill for LGBT are also being opposed by the indigenous community. It is because we didn't create that bridge to also understand them and also amplify their voices. Now we're creating this strategy to be able to be more inclusive when it comes to equality movement in the Philippines. So that's my inspiration. I think we all can provide something or can help something, and I think I feel like this is my share of what I could contribute for the other marginalized communities.
Thank you. I mean, when I have noticed as well personally, seeing that it provides you with a new reality, for many probably, a new reality, and with a lot of obstacles, challenges, and then I saw some opportunities as well. Something that can be done or is being done. If I come to you, Mikhail, was it your mother who spoke about the school? Or would you like to tell us more about, could you take us to Tabi Tabi?
Yeah, that was my mother. She was the founder of the school, but I've been of an involved family in that project. Yeah, it's sort of to give you an impression of how to get there. You're gonna probably spend 2-3 days even after you've landed in Manila, because you have to fly all the way down to the south, take a plane out to a place called Bunga, sort of where you saw the ferries landing, and then from there you have to go on a tiny speedboat and hold on to your things because it's gonna get bumpy, and then you get all the way out to Sibutu, the island that you saw here, and there's a mixture of different communities, like that was also mentioned. So you have the Sama people, which is Myanmar, SAMA DILAUT, Sama. The Sama people are boring, like most others. We work in offices and we have a 9-to-5. Tausuks, such as Rhadem and some other groups, and then sort of in between these villages where you see nice and colorful houses, you'll see something that looks a little more like a shanty town, and that's usually where you find the SAMA DILAUT people. Yeah, and what can be striking, and I actually have a friend who cried when she saw it, is that you can see these lovely, colorful homes and then what looks like economic misery, and it actually is. So yeah, that's the conditions on the island right now. It is improving a bit. People are building more houses. There's some infrastructure coming out, but sadly, I'm not seeing the SAMA DILAUT follow along in this development. So they're still living in the same types of homes. It's actually getting worse because there's less catch and all these things. So yeah, I hope that gives you a somewhat impression.
When you say that in terms of the development or moving forward, you don't see SAMA DILAUT people being part of it, as we see in the film, how SAMA DILAUT community is being treated or seen by the other community because of the relationship of the fish or the sea, and how the smell or about the life itself being on the sea is something that many land people probably can't relate to. What are for you the core reasons that they are not having? Are they having participation also in the government representation or international development? For instance, like if you look into the biodiversity, which is very important for community like SAMA DILAUT, are they also being part of the solution processes like COP or the Convention for Biodiversity? Are they playing a role, or communities like that?
It's a complicated question to answer because they're a very sort of anarchistic group. They're forward nomads. Now I think it's not as fair to call them nomads now that they've been pushed onto the shore. So a lot of them will have different practices, but what they largely have in common is beyond the family level, there's a lack of organization, because this was never an aspect of their culture they had to focus on, because the whole idea and what makes them maybe a little bit alien to us on the land, they might be foreign to you, but they're also foreign to a lot of Filipinos actually that don't understand it. They're very aloof, and when there's a problem, the preferable solution they have is to escape it somewhere else. And this is a very valid strategy when you're in an environment, like was also said in the movie, where you have conflict, you have various natural disasters sometimes, you had the headhunters back in Borneo, pirates and different things. So this makes them, I think this has made it a bit difficult for them to organize. There is a group in another part of the Philippines, a SAMA DILAUT group as well, but they're able to engage more, but that area is also more developed, and they still face a lot of stigma. For example, they're making it as a public policy, but they're saying bajau, which is the term they don't prefer. They're saying the ones who beg on the streets are bajau, the ones who work are kujaus. And it's a bit distasteful, but in the end they're still provided with some support. But largely, no, they're not really participating in or really accounted for in a lot of these conventions on biodiversity, for example. And in my opinion, they should be, because this is from an area called the Coral Triangle, which is some of the most diverse and rich, or the reefs, at least they should be. Now we're on the 6th year of a fish shortage, so there's definitely a lot of environmental problems there to be solved.
Thank you. If I may ask you, Darya, what is your impression as a climate activist fighting for climate justice in Germany and elsewhere, and also from your own experience of seeing climate as like climate action needs to be intersectional, looking into other issues like race, sexuality, migration. What is your impression seeing the movie right now, and would you like to share something from your experience about vulnerable communities facing climate change?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, we've been trying to portray different perspectives on the climate crisis and the various consequences that we see all around the world that people are experiencing, because like the main issue is that in Germany or also in Europe and North America, like the global north, there has been a quite well, kind of closed view on the climate crisis. It was always about the consequences for us and for like the global north and about our future. So, and there have been several climate justice activists from all over the world who said, okay, we need to talk about what's happening already right now, especially in like indigenous communities, the global south. And as we can see, the consequences are very different and cannot be summarized or summed up in like a short description. And we've had like discussions and talks with several activists from different places. We tried to show movies and to give information and inputs and workshops, and that's part of the events that I have organized. But still, I think there is never enough. Like there's always something new you can learn, and people and areas that people, especially in Germany, might not know about. That is the case in the movie. Like that was something that I've not known that much about. Like I've heard about indigenous communities in the Philippines, but I've not really had like a concrete idea and the image of what the consequences of the climate crisis look like, what the impact is. So I'm really thankful that I had the chance to see the movie and see it so visually.
I mean, what it really translates to as well, like we talk about climate change and making climate actions, amending our behaviors, our preferences on how much we travel, what we eat, where it's being sourced, how much do I need what. These questions actually answer to problems being reduced. For instance, the consequences we probably are not facing consequences as much, like the flood happened, which was devastating in Germany and other European countries neighboring Germany. But the consequences are being faced by people at the margin somewhere else. It's also our responsibility. That's what I take from the movie, and how in for instance, Fridays for Future movement, probably you will be able to bring the value from here as well, how us being responsible in terms of climate for environment, we can actually reduce the harm, because how it translates to it's attacking the fundamental human need. For instance, clean water. We saw about scarcity of food, accommodation, people having to move away from where they were to shore, even further, but where are the corals and fish and all of that? So it disturbs the whole living climate itself, while you are struggling with hate and violence that are based on, for me, I don't see how one person can hate another, but these are sometimes also encouraged by the scarcity of resources and also the difficulty that communities face. Would you like to tell us about like how are the relationship between each communities, indigenous communities, and how the government is responding to the conflicts that are being faced? Maybe you all could feel free, whoever have the answer. And also, I would be interested to know, as you talked about that the representation of women in the movie was very important to you, and it was also kind of noticed by the audience probably that most of the interviewees were women. And I asked myself the question, what is the role of women, or if gender has any significance in terms of being part of these indigenous communities, and how power and privileges interact with that. And could you tell us more about, as well, within the minority vulnerable group over there, as an indigenous community, what about the other vulnerable intersections, for instance, queer community, or if there are queer children who are going to the school, people with disability and so on? Be very interested.
That was a long question. Yeah, what was the first part of your question again? I'm sorry, the best part was about
the relationship between these indigenous communities and the interaction of government, and how.
So to understand how other communities see the SAMA DILAUT, you have to sort of go a bit back in time. You have to looking at the history, right? We have the Tausouks, for example, a proud warrior people, never defeated by the Spanish. This sort of culture. You had the SAMA, which were more trade focused, business oriented, and I think at that time when the SAMA DILAUT were living at the sea, they were viewed as almost part of the sea, but that's not our problem. Those are not our people, and maybe the Tausouks saw them as kind of cowards, maybe because they would escape these conflicts. Then you had the American and the Spanish colonial regimes that classified them as sort of low value, or not worth investing any time or effort in. Sadly, which translated on into the future today. So a lot of people will actually look at the SAMA DILAUT as maybe some form of uncivilized, lazy, undisciplined people who like to beg on the street. There's a lot of victim blaming in this sense. So you'll hear, I for example heard that, the SAMA DILAUT, they just sell their children. That's what they do. And this is a sort of mentality where you've sort of taken away their struggle and instead sort of said, this is your nature and this is how you are. So this is unfortunately how they're seen, and also why they're laughed at in school. And I think this has been a slow, gradual change into these conditions, because as the number of fish were decreasing, as industries were exploding, the SAMA DILAUT were slowly pushed out from their traditional lifestyle, and now essentially they're on land and they're without an identity at all, almost, right? So they don't have the seagoing lifestyle anymore. They don't have any inheritance, no political power, any of these type of things. So this is the unfortunate reality today. That's unfortunately it.
Yeah, also to answer your question is that try to imagine this, that they've been living peacefully in the middle of the sea, and because of the effect of climate change and global warming that kills the coral reefs and also destroy the biodiversity, that they were forced inland and they become at risk of statelessness. Aside from that, they go inland where society treated them as lower class citizen or of no value. They are also subjected to the inland policies, which they are not adapted to. And access to education, opportunities, even government documents, IDs, is always a struggle with them. So they end up with they decided to make something out of it, then live in the shoreline, and at the same time cultivate and also culture seaweed product. I don't know if you see it on the film when that lady talking about what they do with their seaweed farming. They actually put chemical in the sea for the seaweed to grow faster, because seaweed industry in the Philippines is really big, but it's not always the farmers that makes money. It's always the middleman and also the big companies that buys it. So for the SAMA DILAUT to make a decent money just to survive probably for 3 days or 1 week, they have to mass produce seaweeds. So for them to do that, they put chemical in the sea, and actually the chemical also affects the biodiversity of the sea. So you can see the cycle, like they were the victim of climate change, and now they are contributing as well to the destruction of the sea. I'm not saying that they are bad people, but they were, because of the circumstances that they experienced from the sea and coming to inland, and all these intersecting marginalization that occur because of forced migration, it contributed more to the damages, not just to their lives, but also to the environment as well. And imagine if they are also member of the LGBT community as well. Imagine, because the Tawi-Tawi is part of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Islamic Government region in Mindanao. So these are dominated mostly by Islamic communities, and in that area, LGBT is still perceived as immoral, not acceptable, and all these kind of things. And in the Philippines, we still doesn't have a national law on comprehensive anti-discrimination. So we don't really have this kind of law that will fully protect you from all this possible harm that could come because of your identity as indigenous people, as gender marginalized groups, and all of that. So those are the challenges. So we have a law on ancestral domain for the indigenous people, but I think but it doesn't cover ancestral waters. So that's also a challenge there. So SAMA DILAUT are not protected under the indigenous people law of the Philippines, because the SAMA DILAUT lives in the sea, which the law do not covers ancestral waters. So that's also a challenge. So there's a lot of policies that could be done if only all the marginalized community can come together and really fight for it. For now, we are sort of like on our own, because there's certain community that they just work on their own kind. That's why with our pride organization, we try to create that bridge to bring them in, to really start conversation and to create allyship, because through allyship we can win a possible legislation in Congress. So that's what we're doing currently in the Philippines as one of our programs, and hopefully it will turn out into something really positive and monumental for the benefit of the marginalized community.
Do you want to say something to that? Please don't.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. What was the original question, actually?
You do a comment on something.
I just have to think of it. No, I mean, in general, I think it's actually, I'm really glad to hear about all of that, because I didn't have that much insight. And I think it was a really good explanation, or it's a good example of how the climate crisis and also like the whole global exploitation of resources and humans impact communities, and how they're connected to gender and to racism and oppression. So thank you for that. And I think, and also that refers to the movie as well. I think it's just a really good visualization of the experience of the people. And I think it's a good way to just, spread that movie, show it to people to raise awareness about that.
Definitely. I mean, I agree definitely with you. The point is that art and culture being a medium or a path with which we are able to reach more people and bring attention to important issues that we're facing. I am still curious to learn about what could be done in such situation. Because you look into how climate change is exacerbating its effects on people, and it's impacting mostly, I mean, what we have seen as well, that wealthier population often move away when an area is being impacted or being non-livable through climate change. However, the vulnerable poor community or community with less privileges and resources remain there, and often it's actually a fight of survival, like, you know, putting chemical in for seaweeds to grow faster, or how to acquire fish when there is competition of fishermen with equipment, for instance. What role do we play over there as a global citizen to take responsibility for one another? I see from the movie and hearing from you, I see that in times when such an issue like climate change can have an impact in our livelihood, so that it's really about existence, it is easy to find conflicts arising very rapidly because of the resources. Often I wonder if there is a global war, hope not, touching wood. I often wonder if there's a global war or something, what happens to me as a person of color, as a queer person, because the fear is that when we have less support or less opportunity, that there will be a competition to get it. And in that competition, often people use certain privileges or certain attributes which make them feel that they can claim it or they're entitled to it. Like SAMA DILAUT, there are many indigenous communities and vulnerable communities around the world who are facing the same thing. If you look into Brazil, or if you look into African continent, other Southeast Asian region as well, or even to the north, to the indigenous community in Norway, for instance. What could international community do? Because sometimes government can't do much alone. There should be climate change related response program, for instance, like to build capacity institution, where institutions are able to provide support. But what do you think that people who are listening here, who have watched the movie, what these individuals are able to do for that we know that we are moving towards solution than problem?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost is include the indigenous people in the solutions, no matter what sort of solutions you think of, because last thing you want to do is think of something great and brilliant up here in Germany, go down to Tawi and realize that was kind of a complete dream. There's nothing to do with reality. So for us at ICLC, it's really about how do we get the SAMA DILAUT seen as an active participant in the community in a way that we also at the same time preserve their dignity, so we don't end up calling them gujaus because you have a job and you're not begging. So for example, an easy solution for us is a key threat to their survival is the lack of fish. And unfortunately, as Rhadem said earlier, they're also contributing themselves to this sort of cycle of oppression because they're practicing fish bombing, right? Which includes, it's basically throwing explosives onto some of the best coral reefs in the world. And that shockwave kills a lot of fish. It kills even more juvenile fish. So that's the whole next generation of your output wiped out right there in one bomb. So here it really comes down to education and participation from the SAMA DILAUT. So we educate them by, well, we teach their children, right? But that automatically gives us access to the parents because they trust us with their children. They will probably also trust us with some other things. And at the same time, we're also we're also getting them seen, right? So for example, we at the end of every graduation ceremony, as we have at the Philippines, we host an event where they do a cultural dance and we sort of celebrate them a little bit. This has already done a lot to remove the stigma, at least in Sibutu. The children are learning and they're doing dances and they're demonstrating their culture proudly, right? And further on, we would like to also do something about this fish bombing, because this is a very cheap solution. The solution here is you get SAMA DILAUT who already know the ocean, as if, like the streets in your neighborhood, and you get them to do some patrols where they will record the amount of fish bombs they see, for example, or illegal fishing activities. Essentially, for any other indigenous community, doing this, showing them as not only like a primary stakeholder in their ecosystems or in fighting climate change, but showing them on the forefront of the solutions, I think that is the way forward, if you ask me and our organization.
I think the solution first is acceptance. Accept the reality that this is happening, and we should convince our government to take action on it. The challenge here is that a lot of government are denying it because they don't want to take action on it. So it's also our responsibility to convince our legislators or local politicians to really champion in what you call it? What's it? Oh my God, my English is gone. To halt the effect of climate change and to combat the adverse effect. Also at the same time as well is that provide opportunities. Like for example, now I'm doing the human rights program of the German Foreign Office in the Philippines, but not climate change is not part of my program. So my contribution is that since I can make film, so might as well do this, and also to do a campaign for the indigenous community in the Philippines, provide the representation, and at the same time show the realities that a lot of people also don't see around the world and even in our own country. I think people can do something in our own little ways, no matter how small and big. And just imagine if you have something small, then combine it with the other things that other people can contribute, and it will become big. I always say this is that we're all here because we're privileged people. And I think there's two types of people. It's the one that, just sit down and sit on their privileges and be spectator. But there are some who decided to participate. So I hope that after watching the film, you decide to participate into this discussion. It doesn't have to be monumental that you contribute something really big. The effort on educating your friends and your family once you go home and really create that culture of proper disposal in your own household actually helps a lot. So I think in our own little ways we can contribute. And some people would think, it's too small. Actually, those small things really could create a bigger impact in the long run. So yeah, acceptance and create of culture of really making sure that we do our responsibility in halting the effect of climate change, or not? Is it halting? I forgot the right word. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I agree with both of you, first of all, and in general, I think the climate crisis is complex, and there are several opportunities to fight against it in many different ways. There are different levels on which we can take certain measurements. Some of them have been named by you, so I think also that you can just start by your everyday life and see how much you can contribute to, live more environmental friendly, considering the possibilities and opportunities that you personally have. But yeah, and then I think if you also are willing to participate more actively, you can group up with other people so that you have like a louder, bigger voice, also politically, and put pressure on, for example, political leaders. I think that's also an important issue, especially on the global level, because we need, I mean, we have, for example, the Paris Climate Agreement, which says that we have to reduce global warming to 1.5 degrees, but in fact, most governments are not actually committing to it practically. So we are about to fail that goal. And so I think it's also important to, put pressure, maybe go protest, sign petitions, whatever, so that certain global measurements can be taken. For example, the 1.5 degree, or also we need more climate finance internationally to help the most affected communities to protect themselves, because it's often just a lack of money and material. So especially wealthy countries like Germany have to give more money into an international fund. So this is something that we can demand directly from our government. That's also one of the demands that we have as Fridays for Future from, for example, the German Minister of Finance. So yeah, that's, for example, one case. And also it's the government's responsibility to kind of restrict into like global enterprises and companies, because especially there are fossil fuel companies or other global players who are like exploiting a lot and also have a huge impact on communities by taking their water, other necessary resources. So that's also something that you can demand by grouping up with other people.
Very much so. You're basically saying that protest for those who are not here to protest and are probably not able to make decisions for their future. But we possibly are if we vote responsibly, if we are talking to each other, promoting the values that will bring us forward, and be more responsible in terms of consumption and our practices and what we support politically as well. I would like to open it to the audience. If you are interested in asking a question, feel free. Or share a comment. Yep. We encourage you to. Thank you.
Oh. Thank you very much. This was a really beautiful documentary. I enjoyed it a lot. And I actually visited a conference yesterday and I think before at the University of Mannheim, where we also talked about these topics. Sorry, I made some notes that I don't forget everything that I thought about. Because I think that one, Alicia was your name, right? You mentioned something that for me is really important that we sometimes forget when we talk about sustainability. I'm not used to speaking English anymore. And is that we also have to be very careful about talking about the social, cultural, and socio-economic perspective of the different indigenous cultures, and that they actually survived without the intervention of governments for thousands of years. And then colonialism actually ended up delivering a narrative about them not being able to, govern themselves and actually use their own knowledge about the distribution of different kinds of products and hunting and I don't know, the whole economic system. And so what I would really like to, this is not a question, it's more a comment on something we really need to think about, is that sustainability should not be, the narrative on it should not be put on the same level than the development politics that we've been developing in the last, I don't know, 100 years since colonialism, and it's like from the official a good part, but we're still thinking like that. And I think that a lot of indigenous people think that their rewards and that the knowledge that they used to have to use the resources they had is not valuable. So, for example, then we still see, for example, the differences from the people that are nomads, and that we judge these nomads as being poor. And I mean, yes, if we judge from the perspective of neoliberalism, they are poor. But what if we create another system of thinking where the knowledge that we share or that we value is not only the colonial one, where we need education, we need politicians, we need documents, we need all these things to make people valuable, but more that we go back to the systems. And of course, we need education and we need all these things. For me, it's important just to raise this other way of existing to the same level that we value Western economics, Western education, Western whatever we want to talk about. And I think that we can see that very well in what the women said in the film, that for example, that I think the woman that migrated to Malaysia and then went back because, I mean, she said, at least here I have control over my time and the work that I do. And I think that is what we need to, if we talk about the Global South, is to value more how we used to do things and actually take that back and bring that to Europe, because we had lost the knowledge that we had also about how to farm and everything. And there's actually so much knowledge that is not gone yet. We can still create a conversation and a dialogue with these people, but we have to value them for what they are and what they do, without this interpret we say with the lenses of the Europeans, so that they are actually as worse as anybody else. And thank you for this really great event.
Thank you for your very great comment. Would you like to introduce what's your name?
I'm Andrea Chagas. I work with, I'm not, I have nothing to do with sustainability, but I work with the Global South, and I come myself from South America, so I know how we treat our indigenous people, and that they're actually, so much knowledge to share. We just need to ask the right questions and actually listen. So I think that's what we should do, listen to them.
Thank you very much. Very important point that we should not be forgetting colonialism and its lasting effects in today's world, and also in development politics, as you talked about, and also to see other ways of living, not as something that is not right, but rather go back and seeing our indigenous roots, seek for the knowledge that we have had, and how we can see living and life differently like people do elsewhere. Thank you very much. Anyone like to serve comment or comment?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rhadem Musawah. I also come from the Philippines, and I work very hard, but I come here as a learner, as a student, because I'm also having my PhD. And I just comment of seeing additional insight to what we treated Andrea just said. We have on the side of we are also excited about to see our cultural cultural relief, also problems and cultural preservation, especially of our indigenous people who are more of working on their survival than preserving culture, preserving language, preserving the way they used to enjoy or to use living in the ocean or in the sea. So that is one thing. But the other thing also, that one we need to really, not only more of the others, which I work, where I work, and also to our leaders, and doing mutual collaborations. Because one, we have to see statistics that it's on retaliate. What I'm saying that they have survived for thousands of years. But at what it our general mortality rate, the infant mortality rate. And also, yes, the food security, they are suffering for many years. And so right now I understand gives me the influence of the Western Asian, and also the good globalization for more than 300 years in the Philippines. But yes, right now, I have these two approaches that I can give. One is the immediate approach and the long-term approach in dealing with, our problem in growing digestive welfare. Immediate approach in the sense that we have to prioritize their access to safe drinking water, as what have been shown in the field. Next is their access to education, because really that education will introduce them to well-be educated on the rights to participate, on the rights to be heard, of what they of what of the welfare that they need to available from the government, and also teaching them the basic of social waste management, which is also responsible of the government, and all the long-term approach and responsible of the government to collaborate. Because we know people in the government mostly are educated, but are they exposed enough, or are they informed enough on the right way of preserving the environment? So, then like this, we are very thankful that I am able to, attend this kind of discussion with them here, the film producer, actually, go with him, we did this and countries in Europe, to solve the film, and get much, the many learnings as we can get from your country that will help us, that will certainly help us in also, crafting policies that for climate protection and promoting our vulnerable communities. Thank you.
Any more comments or questions? You're away. Up to.
Hello, everybody. I'm Maria. I'm a software engineer with Mike from ESTAT, a European Space Agency. Anyway, has nothing to do with this. I met Rhadem in a podcast that we have for the Filipino community. Also, I came from the same country as Miguel, right? Oh, no. Yeah, I go. Yes. And yeah, he mentioned about, I'm also a member of the Iloilo Bright Team, which is another region in the Philippines. Our anti-discrimination bill has been submitted in 2004, that's 20 years ago, and has not been approved until now. But good news is that we have also ordinances in cities that we have pushed and successfully approved by the government as well. So that in a way we are making small steps. So yeah. With regards to your film, what's the immediate solution that you're seeing? Because, climate change is affecting not only the indigenous communities, but the entire world. In my mission alone, we also have the Panay Bukidnon, which are land, they live in the indigenous community with land-based, and also affected by mining companies, they're also being migrated because of these corporations being built on their land. So how do you see these things, change that's going to affect these people, especially with how the government is at the moment in our country? What do you see in their future?
Yeah, I think the path here is, if the government is a bit slow, then we have to engage the CSOs, the civil society elements of the country. And that is actually what we're seeing also in Sibutu, in Tawi-Tawi. I know there's an impatience in the what do we do now, sort of, you want this, you've just seen it, it's a bit hard to watch, you want it to go away. But I think from our perspective, like you have two main things you have to be concerned about. One is the immediate needs of the SAMA DILAUT people. I think you should effectively treat them as climate refugees with all the same. You need medical aid, food, because they've lost everything. right? So we need to realize that in a way, and that's more difficult when there's no big war going on or a big earthquake, when it's this slow, gradual change into misery. But that's essentially step one. Step two is education, right? Equipping them for themselves. What is it? The cliche is teach a man to fish. They already know how, but anyway. Equip them with, as was mentioned before, legal knowledge of their rights. Equip them with the solutions they can implement themselves for sustainable solutions. With education in particular, I think we at ICLC, we really combat the stigma of these are just stupid people that are lazy. It's as simple as, being able to read a sentence. All of a sudden, you're pretty much as good as anybody else who's been to school, right? There's a very big difference between being educated and not being educated. So, in other ways, as Mona Lisa said, integrate them into the government policies as well. So, immediate relief efforts, education, and integration into the policies is actually the only way I see this going forward, because otherwise we will continue this slide into... my fear is that if nothing at all is done, then they will just be another part of the slums in Manila, with no idea where they came from, with no knowledge even of their own ancestry. That would be the nightmare for me. But thank you for the question.
I'm Zolan. I'm the part of the LGBTI Commission of the City of Mannheim, and thank you very much for this wonderful film. I didn't see it before. It really touched my heart. Learned a lot. Thank you. And my question would be: we heard a lot about immediate needs like drinking water, education, etc. One thing that when we talk about, especially, this is maybe affecting especially vulnerable minorities, but also many others. One thing that when we talked before about similarities and differences of different minorities affected by climate change, especially one similarity was also the invisibility and death through shame and stigma. People are silenced, groups are silenced, and I think one of these immediate needs would be also, of course, the fundamental right, human dignity, that is definitely missing in this whole perspective and discussion. And my question would be, what can we do to strengthen dignity and strengthen empowerment, self-esteem, to understand that your voice is valuable in this discussion and is listening at the moment, and that there are tables that talk about your personal future and you're not up on that table at the moment. And what maybe also could the global climate campaign for community do to make these voices heard louder at the moment? What maybe should be done from your perspective, from climate change groups? What is necessary that could be done in terms of reach out, that indigenous communities would participate in such groups? Last idea or question would be, queer communities, international connected climate change community maybe also, but the subgroups of Queers for Future, that queer community engaging into climate change issues, etc. I personally don't know if there are international networks or networks of vulnerable groups affected by climate change. Maybe we could hear also about that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, I can start by talking about the climate movement's perspective. So I'm really interested to hear your perception, because of course, I would say some of us are really trying to, reach out to different groups and especially to different countries and areas globally. But of course, I think there is always more to do. And I mean, the general thing maybe to start with is that actually there is often some kind of misconception that the current global or climate movement was initiated by European activists, but actually I think indigenous groups have started the history of climate justice fights, and they're at the front line, and there are still several indigenous activist groups from all over the world that are still fighting, and I think sometimes the circumstances are way more difficult than the ones we have here. So that in general, so there is a lot going on, I think, and I also have just a certain amount of knowledge about all those fights. I have worked with some groups, for example, from like indigenous groups from Indonesia or South America. But of course, I think there's always more to do. It's always good to have contact, to reach out, to have, calls together, to start campaigns together, to have panels where different activists, different groups speak and can explain their situation. I think those are some kind of examples of how we try to start it. But yes, I mean, I think there's always more to do and more to learn about.
I think representation in any type of medium, may it be on TV, on film, on radio, or pop culture, dances, and art, is really important because, representation really matters because we want to show other people's physical manifestation of their pain and also their hope. So a lot of people, because I also have a lot of there were some people who criticized that this is poverty porn because what they want to watch are the sea gypsies that are good in swimming. They want all those positive context, but they don't want all to know about their struggles. There's always this level of tokenism when we try to appreciate indigenous arts and indigenous lifestyle. But a lot of people don't want to extend their hand to help this community thrive. That's why it is always important that we not just bring into the room a member of the indigenous community, give them a seat and be able to talk in the discussion. Because a lot of times we bring them for the photo ops, they're inside the room, but they don't hold the microphone. So that's always the challenge there. It's always like being able, not just being able to echo the voices of those who doesn't have the voice, but being able to give them an actual voice and to be able to really express what do they need, what do they think, and at the same time find solution and collaborate and create a better environment, not just also for them, but also for everyone to really coexist and create a peaceful environment.
Do you have more questions? Would you like to would you say something? I can quite tell. I would like to respond to that as well. I think what we need doing globally as well to meet all the goals that we have for 2030. Madam Deputy Mayor also mentioned 2030. It's not far away though. What we need doing is to not just promote, but also live the values of human rights and equal dignity. Equal dignity in the sense where I am not better than you, or I'm not having right on something more than you, and I cannot violate you, period. And what we are seeing in the world at the moment, that often differences in politics and religion, differences in way of living are taken into account when taking someone's right away
and their dignity being violated. Looking at marginalized communities or vulnerable communities where they have internal conflict while having a bigger issue approaching where they have to protect themselves and their lives and their community. Over there, they can also join force, collaboration, as we talked about, collaboration and solidarity, join force in fighting the issue. What you talked about being like how the movement of climate, if it's really affecting many of us or every one of us, how can we join force in solidarity and raise climate as an issue politically in terms of like bringing change, drastic changes. Over there, we need awareness programs, awareness in a sense of within the communities where they would need to deal with themselves that what for a long time in history they have been learning about other communities and other groups of character being this way or that way are merely myths to sustain the power of their own or to continue this conflict. And often these come from colonialism. Often these come from inflicted upon communities by people who have benefited from the communities, who had commercial or financial interest in them. So we need awareness, deep awareness of us as human and our value, our potential, and what we could do together instead of against each other. Another point I would say that issues facing vulnerable communities that are derived from climate change shouldn't be met by only themselves and their own governments, but I think international community and governments have a lot of responsibility in that, in responding and tackling it as well. And where there's a problem, there's also potential of finding creative, innovative solutions. So we need experts, scientists, scholars, international business and financial community to look at those problems and find interest, human interest, and solve problems to respond to this.
Yeah, I just wanted to say absolutely, especially agreeing on that last part. Let's not be afraid to get a little bit creative with it, because remember all these oil companies and other international groups, they have, you know, brainstorming sessions as well, and they're also thinking about how do we expand our profits. So it's just as important that, you know, maybe we've been looking into a mobile game to reach the young generation, because everybody in the Philippines is on their phone. So something that highlights them there, some outreach programs to schools where you do a fun activity. Don't be afraid to go a little bit off the course, try something new, but remember to, for God's sake, stay in it for the long term, right? Because it's so easy when you're facing something as colossal and global as climate change that you sort of fall back and think, oh, this is way too much. I can't deal with it. Stay in it for the long term, right? Don't give up, because again, even with the documentary you just saw, the SAMA DILAUT, they looked very pitiable in this movie, right? Like there's a lot of problems, but at the same time, they are incredibly resourceful people, right? And they have lived through so much. And now we're talking 400 years of war and colonization, and they're tough, you know, like they had to be. So really put them in the fight, help themselves, and help us as well, right? Because in the end, I mean, from our organization perspective, like the mothers are buying cloth and sewing pants for their children so they don't get ridiculed in the schools, right? And they're going a long way to get to the school. So once, you know, we've reached out, once they know what the hell we're doing, why are you taking my children to the school, once they get the point, they will put everything in it to try and fix it themselves. Because in the end, this is not just a foreign victim that we should pity. This is a human being, and they're just as determined to survive as we are. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So climate cannot just be a curse, but could also be a solution or an opportunity for solving this problem. And to that note, I would like to end the closing panel and thank our collaborators, partners who have invited us. Thank you to Kunsthalle Mannheim. Thanks to the Commission for LGBTI in Mannheim and Mannheim Queer Center. Thank you very much for having us here.